Alright, so we're going to take a quick look at the X-T30's video capabilities. We're going to go through the menu items and talk about them. You're going to find out that this has really become a very, very competent video camera. Perfectly good backup for the X-T3 or just as a standalone for anything now. So if you look into the menu, the first thing you're going to see is now there's actually many pages. It's many pages long, not just a few items like it was on the X-T20. There's all kinds of great things now that you can set for your personal taste and your personal needs. First thing is, let's look at the resolution. So it does do 4K UHD at 3,840 pixels across, but now this is something new, is it also does what's called Cinema 4K. Cinema 4K is a 17:9 aspect ratio because it's about 300 pixels longer than regular UHD 4K. So this is a very cool feature. Now notice we are limited though compared to the T3 on frame rates, so it's only from 2398 up to 2997. We cannot do 4K 60 on the X-T30, but the bit rate, megabits per second, has gone up to 200 megabit per second on the X-T30, whereas the X-T20 was limited to only 100 megabit per second. Now the X-T3 doubles the X-T30 bit rate. It goes up to 400 megabit per second. Again, now this is internal recording, so to the SD cards. So 200 megabit per second on the X-T30, and that is using the H.264 codec. The X-T3 is capable of 264 or H.265. The X-T30 is H.264 8-bit only internal, but 200 megabit per second. It will do 120p or 100 frame per second in HD. Full HD, that's 1920 by 1080 at 120 frames per second for that very cool slow-mo effect that comes in handy for sports and nature, stuff like that. Music videos are a good place to use that as well. Look at the choice of film simulations. Those of you who are regular users of Fujifilm cameras know we have these fantastic film simulations based on real film stocks. Well, look what we added to the X-T30, the Eterna Cinema film simulation, which is based on our motion picture color negative movie film stock. So it gives you this incredibly beautiful tonal scale with incredibly beautiful accurate color reproduction without having to do anything additional. It's really a fantastic, beautiful movie looking quality coming right straight out of the camera. Going further through the menus, what you'll find is, if you look, you'll see a bunch of tone control settings that typically are the things you've been applying for still photography. Highlights, shadows, saturation, stuff like that. Well, now those same tone control settings that you can do for still photography, you can now apply separately into the video settings on the X-T30. So it's separate from your still photography settings. Whatever you do here in the menu will not carry over to the still photography. So this is very, very nice. It's dedicated tone control settings for video. One of the new things that we got from the X-T3 is something known as interframe noise reduction. So this is a very sophisticated noise reduction process where it looks at the frame before the current frame to see what the noise pattern was there before applying a noise reduction to the current frame. So on regular noise reduction, it's sort of the same, everything is the same across the board no matter what frame you're shooting on. Interframe applies noise reduction selectively each frame on the fly as it's recording. So it gives you about a half stop better, cleaner look, less noise than you're used to with the previous generation. It's really kind of nice. This is one, again, that a lot of people really care about, especially in the pro ranks, and that is logarithmic encoding. So Fuji log, F log. With the X-T30, you can record in the logarithmic encoding, which greatly expands your dynamic range and your tonal range. Now the image is really flat and kind of yucky looking. For those of you that have never shot professional video, you must think this looks horrible. And it does. This is not something you give to your customer. but this does give you the ability to do a lot of color correction, a lot of image massaging to maintain the shadows and the highlights and do things to the picture to make it look as perfect as possible. So this is a really wonderful feature to have on basically a sub $1,000 camera. So because of the new sensor and new processor in the X-T30, we're now also able to add AF tracking adjustments in the X-T30, something you could not possibly do in the X-T20 at all. So when you're in the AFC mode, where the camera is tracking, so you're shooting moving subjects, action, sports, things like that, you can now set the sensitivity and the responsiveness of the AF system to be able to follow your action just the way you want it, whether you want a quick response or a fast response for autofocus, you know, it tracks really well. Okay, right? The other thing we've added is face detection, not just face detection, but eye detection as well. So the X-T30 now lets you do dual recording to 2 destinations with 4K and HD. What I mean by that is you can record to the internal SD card and out the HDMI to a second device at the same time. You can have 4K going both places at once. Or one could be HD and the other could be 4K. So you could have a master file and you can have a backup. That's a very, very cool feature to have. I want to point out the HDMI out on the X-T30, huge change, huge jump from the previous generations. This is 422 uncompressed 10-bit. Yes, you heard me. This is a make or break thing for a lot of professionals. Not just 8-bit. The external HDMI is 422 10-bit video. The internal SD card is still 420 8-bit, like I've said before, but HDMI out is now 10-bit capable. Another new feature on the X-T30 is something called zebras. This is something that came from video technology. It's been around for a long time. It's kind of like the little blinking highlight warning you see on still cameras. So you can have the zebras go to the left or to the right, and this basically shows up at a threshold that you set. So you could set it 50%, 90%, 100%, and wherever the exposure hits that level, you will see the zebras appear on the screen. It's not recorded. This is only something you see on the LCD or the EVF of the camera. Very, very helpful exposure tool. Compared to the X-T20, the X-T30 gets the same level of audio settings as in the X-T3 camera. So much finer level of detail in setting the levels. You can do internal, external separately, and set all kinds of wind cut filters and noise reduction as well. The X-T30 also now will record timecode and will send timecode out via the HDMI. You can set the timecode to be a number that you choose, or just have it be the current time of day, which is the way most cinema and broadcast productions use. They use time of day. So this is very, very good for editing purposes. Finally, one of the things that it gets from the X-T3, which is also kind of very, very cool, is it now gets what's known as the silent control. The reason it's called the silent control is because if you want to adjust the shutter speed or the aperture while you're shooting, usually you have to use the knobs, and you hear this. Well, we don't want to do that. So by enabling the silent control, this lets you change settings by touching the LCD. So you just touch your finger to the LCD quietly and just scroll up and down. You can change the shutter speed, you can change the ISO, the white balance, all while you're recording, on the fly changes. Really, really cool thing. Thanks for joining me. Do check out the X-T30 at a dealer near you.